नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter number 16, beginning from verse number 1. So before we start, we had some questions from yesterday.
Yes.
Okay. Haribol.
It's Nadili. I had actually two questions. The first one was about forgiveness because I don't think I quite understand perfectly the concept. Does forgiveness also means reconciliation? Because I understand it's something from the heart when we don't have any resentment or anything from the heart. But what if, let's say we have a conflict of values with the person? It means we have forgiven for what happened, but still the way the person behaves or things, we have a disagreement. First question. And the second question was about the cow in the story. I was wondering if the cow would have preferred to be sacrificed and not to have been rescued because you said she felt really sad that so many people have been killed because of her, or to have her back.
So forgiveness, at least in Sanskrit, because sometimes meaning may change by translation. So Sanskrit, as you know, is a language where nouns are made from roots which have meaning. So the word for forgiveness is kshama. And it comes from the root kshamus, which means to be able to bear or tolerate. So what it signifies is that somebody offends you and you can react, take action, take revenge, but you don't do that. And also it does not mean that you are carrying some wound in your heart or some sort of discomfort or anguish. No, you just say, okay, I forgive, means I accept and tolerate it, and I'm not going to do anything about it. So that is what forgiveness here it means. Like in this particular example, this Kartavirya Arjuna, he can say kidnapped the cow of sage Jamdagni. So one is what Parshuram did, he went and he attacked and he killed the army and got the cow back and killed him also. And one is what Jamdagni was suggesting, that he should have been forgiving, means you don't take action on that. So that's what forgiving means. You may have agreement, you may not have. Obviously, where is the agreement? That person is stealing the cow, you don't agree to that he is doing that, or he is stealing, kidnapping or taking by force. So you certainly do not agree to that. In fact, Jamdagni was not happy that he did it. That's why the forgiving comes. If you agree, then where is the forgiveness? Means he is doing something which you agree to. So there is a disagreement or disharmony of whether it is principle or thought process, whatever may be the situation. So he did not agree to that, but he is saying that you don't have to take revenge on this. As far as the second one, I never said that the cow thought that so many people got killed about that. I don't know if did I say that? I never said anything like that. that cow was thinking like that. I don't think that I said it. What I said is that cow was unhappy that she underwent all this problem. Not that she was unhappy that so many people got killed.
Okay.
Okay, Swamiji.
My question was about, it was almost the same as the last question Malati Didi asked last night, but we're told Parshuram is an avatar or a Leela avatar, and yet here he seems to be acting in a way where he doesn't have self-control and he's succumbing to anger or a lack of discrimination about a situation. And at least in my thinking about it, I can't think of any other example of any other avatar or any other form of Bhagavan where we hear some example where they're used as the case of what not to do, or in the role of someone who's teaching in a negative way how to be. So is this something unique to Parshuram, and why would Bhagavan perform a lila like this?
So first of all, we have to understand that we just make it as a principle that every avatar is coming here to give you an education. So avatars also come to do some act, as Krishna says, to establish dharma. So vinashaya duskritam. So maybe the function is only to destroy the wicked people or religious people, not necessarily that they are going to be an ideal person. That this is, I am coming here and you should take my example. And they just come and kill and go away. So Nrsimhadev came, you think he was a very peaceful person or what? Was he not angry? He is actually worshipped as Ugra Nrsimha. So only thing is that he did not stay very long. And what we hear in Bhagavatam is a very short description, but he also smashed many of them. There was a big fight. But he is an angry person, probably much more angry than Parsuram, because Hiranyakasipu was not less than Kartavirya, he was much more. Everybody was terrified of him.
Well, so I mean, I guess in the case of Nrsimhadev, it seems quite in line with Dharma, that he's protecting his devotee, he's doing away with this troublesome person who's caused a great disturbance in the world and perpetrated many attempts at murder, etc. So it seems quite appropriate that he's sort of establishing justice in this case. But to kill like 17 million people, or however many people are in these Akshunis, like this extremely vast mass murder in this instant.
So if Hiranyakashipu would have called his army to protect himself, so what do you think Nrsimhadev will fold his hands to them, bow down his... What would he do?
No, he would kill.
Yeah, so same thing here.
But it seems, I mean, I guess it seems like that kind of murder for like stealing a cow versus like repeated abuse of so many people.
So if you see what is adharma, then if he is doing this for cow, which is just a symbol that you take someone's property, or cow is a symbol of protecting religion, right? Because that's why, in fact, nowhere in this description the name cow has been used. Everywhere it is used either Havishmati or Havirdhani, right? So, which describes, means the source of performing yajna. So that's what he is stealing. So therefore he is killing for that. I mean, he could have given it back, but he didn't want. He was equally, he is the one who said that you attack him. He says, Achodiyat hasti rathasva pattibhir gadhasi bana drishti satagni saktibhi. That he ordered them to go and attack Parshuram. It's clear that when he saw that tamapatam tam Bhriguvarya Ojasam, when he saw Bhrigu coming, means Bhrigovarya here, Parshuram, then he ordered his army that you go and fight with him. He did not think, okay, let me welcome him and talk to him, cool him down, tell him why I did it. No, he also. So this is what I am saying. You are angry, and then one is that I try to pacify you, other is that I also get angry. So then what happens is, that's what happens. So Parsuram is in angry mood, then he is not receiving him in a peaceful mood. He also comes with the same. So then there is a clash.
I mean, I guess what I'm struggling with is more on the side of Parshuram, like why he wouldn't...
Yes, yeah, I understand that your basic assumption is that every avatar comes here to teach.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that is not necessary that. Buddha also came. So what did he teach? That Vedas are false, they are not the books of knowledge, there is no God, God has no form. Right? So do we accept that? Right? But he is also avatar. So we don't accept what he taught. Although he is one of the 10 avatars. So he came for some specific purpose which he did, and that's it. That was his purpose.
I got your line of thought. My only further concern would be like we think of Buddha as a very composed, self-controlled, like virtuous person in some sense, whereas it seems like Parshuram is like out of control.
So isn't it that more dangerous that he looks so composed and virtuous? So that you can actually be impressed by him and then take to his teachings. Right?
Well,
And that's more dangerous.
In the gradation of thought
Actually, that's what happened in India. The whole India became Buddhist once upon a time. You know how many Buddhist monasteries were here in Mathura district? Few hundred, if not 1,000. I don't remember the exact number, but huge amount. You can go to the museum in Mathura and see. This place, just like now you have ashrams here, this place was full of Buddhist monasteries. This whole Mathura district. They found such old deities of Buddha. You can see in the museum there. So that's actually more dangerous than Parsuram. Parsuram, I think, well, he's an angry guy. What can I learn from him?
Babaji, I also wanted to add, this is Tanmay, that Kartaviriya Arjun was a tyrant. He was not just the cow, but there's also background there. Like Mahabharata describes it, that he was oppressing people, abusing human beings, and also the devas disrespecting them, and so on. So,
Well, that's what I was saying, that when he was powerful, then he was not bothered. Once you have absolute power, you see now even if you are a state leader, still you can be impeached. You can be brought to the court. Right? Except if it is a communist country. But in most countries, and you have seen that happening. But in the situations like this, Kartaviriya Arjun, he has absolute power. So he can do whatever he likes to do and nobody can raise a finger against him. I mean, the only people who can do something is sages who can curse, And if at all they feared them, but he was not fearing him also. So that's why he met his end. So this one story obviously reflects on his character, even if other things are not said, but you can read other, as Tanmay is mentioning Mahabharata or other Puranas there, because Bhagavatam does not go into so many details. Mahabharata gives more details of these stories.
Babaji Maharaj,
Bola.
like how do we understand this showdown between Parshuram and Lakshman, because then both of them are one is like Swayam Vishnu and this one is Satyavesh Avatar, and but then it's never in the this thing that two avatars come across and then there is a showdown kind of a thing.
So what is your question?
Question is, what is it trying to signify?
Well, that's
What is the-
have you read it?
I just read during my childhood this
Sorry.
Parshuram Lakshman Samvad.
So read it again. Okay. Read in Ramayana. So it is to show that even if you are an avatar, if you do something wrong, then you have to bow down. That's when Parsuram retired. So Parsuram is only one type of power, that is anger. So then comes Lord Ramachandra, who also became angry, but there is a difference between his anger and Parsuram's anger. When Parsuram came, he was angry at Lord Ramachandra, right? That's why Lakshman became angry at him. And he was using heavy language against Ram and whole Kshatriya community because he hated Kshatriyas. So how did Ram deal with him? You see, he said, "Why did you break this bow?" So you think it is Ram's mistake, first of all, that he broke the bow? He should have gone and become angry at Janak. It is Janak who invited all the princes that I will give my daughter in marriage, whoever can break this bow. And that is because this bow was so heavy, whether it was physically heavy or not, but it is bow of Lord Shiva, that ordinary people could not lift it up. And Sita lifted it one day while she was cleaning or sweeping or something. So she just lifted it with left hand and put it to the side. It was actually kept in a very, like a worshipable place. It was not just lying somewhere. Kshatriyas, they worship their weapons. It's like Brahmanas, they worship their books. Vaishyas, they worship their balance and weights. I have seen it. Now probably they don't do it, but in the childhood I have seen that these small shopkeepers, when they open their shop, then first thing is they do arti to their balance and the weights. Clean and keep. They actually do it like that. And Kshatriyas similarly used to worship their weapons. And as Brahmanas, they worship the books. And this was Shiva's bow, so there was a special temple made for that. So she was obviously in the temple, the servants are not going to go and clean. Sita herself was there and she thought, let me, this thing is just lying in one place and probably dust accumulated, so she moved it. And Janaka was very surprised. So that's when he got the idea that he will marry her to anyone who can break this. So that is the story, and of course underneath story is that this bow signifies ahankara, because it is Shiva who is the boss of ego. So anyone can break that can have Sita, who is personification of Bhakti Devi. So that means you can get bhakti if you can break ahankara. That is the philosophical meaning behind it. So when all these people were sitting there, then everybody tried because everyone wanted Sita. But no one could actually even move it. So then Janaka made a statement that it looks like that this earth has become devoid of Kshatriyas. So Ramachandra did not go there, it is Vishwamitra who took them there. Vishwamitra has borrowed Ram and Lakshman from Dasarath to protect his yajna because asuras were troubling. So then at that time he said, this thing is going, let's go there. So Rama actually did not go there to participate, he just went because Vishwamitra told him to. He was not invited specifically to come there. And still he was not the first one to get up to break it. So when Janaka said like this, then Lakshman, he felt, what is this? He is insulting Ram who is sitting here. So he got up and he says, if you want I can break it. So then Vishwamitra, he told Ram that you go. So Ram went and he took it in his hand and broke. So when Parshuram asked him that why did you break it? Ram said, no, I did not break it. He says, when I lifted it, it broke. Because he did not go with the ego of that I am the Kshatriya and I am the agent. He said it broke because of the sankalpa of my Guru. He wanted it and therefore it broke. I didn't do anything. So he was not willing to even take that credit. So then Parshuram was still angry. That's when Lakshman got angry at him. And then Parshuram has to run away from there. Because he could not do anything. So Parshuram has to face defeat twice in his life. And this is what I was saying, that there is always a superpower. Especially if you are egoistic person, no matter that you are Shaktavesh avatar or whatever you are. So he has to face defeat with Lakshman. Because everybody was scared of Parshuram. You can imagine how many Kshatriyas he has killed. And here it is Lakshman who is standing in front of him. He says, you want to fight? Come on. I will see what kind of Brahman you are. I am a Kshatriya. And I will make you lick the dust. So he spoke, but his anger was because he is insulting Lord Rama, who is being the personification of humility and modesty. And Rama is not to be blamed for that. If you want to blame, go and blame Janaka. And Rama is saying that no, I did not do it. Even if I did it, I did because my Guru told me to do it. So why are you getting angry at me? What is my fault? So still he was not listening. He was in his ego that I have killed Kshatriyas and who are you? You are just two young boys. And second time he has to eat dust is from Bhishma. When he came and said you should marry her in the Sambha. So even such people have to face defeat. So that is the teaching. That even if you are egoistic and you have pride, if it is misplaced, then you should be ready for someone to come and smash you. Even Ravana came in Sita's marriage ceremony. Because when he heard, he says, oh, I want to marry her. He came. But he did not even attempt. He was clever. He knew that if I do it, what if I'm unable to break it, then all my honor will go in waste. So he tried to preach to Janaka that you marry your daughter to me. He says, why? He says, I lifted Kailash, and who is on Kailash is Shiva, and this is Shiva's bow. So if I can lift whole Kailash, you think I cannot lift this? But he was not attempting to do it. So he left even without trying, because his ahankara was coming. He was so afraid of losing his ahankara. So same happened with Parshuram. So anybody who has this ahankara, then this will be demolished sooner or later. That is shown in Raslila by Krishna. That even gopis, they became proud, although their pride is not pride of Ravana or Parshuram. But even then he disappeared. Even Radharani, she thought that I am the best, then he also disappeared. So pride is not for anyone else, because he is ultimately, everything is coming from Krishna, so who are we to be proud of what? So that's what is shown in between Lakshman and Parsuram Samvad.
Thank you, Babaji.
A couple of things to say. First of all, also the Kalki avatar will come, and it also will only do nothing but just the killing. And second point is Saktaves avatar. If I remember from Laghu Bhagavatamrita, that this is a Saktaves avatar, but is a Jiva actually empowered by the energy of anger in him. So he is not actually equivalent to the Vishnu.
Yeah, Saktavesh means Jiva empowered.
Yesterday, you mentioned that you spoke about the conflict between Jamadagni and Parashuram, and that Jamadagni, his father, told him that we are Brahmanas, you have to decide. If you want to act like a Brahmana, then stay here in my ashram, or if you want to act like a Kshatriya, then better join the army. So I was wondering what this means in my life, and you gave this example of the doctor who has to decide whether he wants to act as a businessman or as a doctor. So I was wondering, what is actually the qualification or the mood that someone like me has to have in order to stay here in your ashram?
So be a devotee and act like a devotee. That's the mood. You have to think you are a servant of Krishna and serve him. If you think anything else, there can be other identifications, but this is the prime. If you make any other identity as prominent and this one as secondary, then you get into trouble. We have to work in this, whether you live in ashram or live in outside world, we have to deal with people and we have to have some other identities. So that has to be within the fold of being a devotee. So when dealing with outside people, we may have to also act like them. But inside we have to know that I am a bhakta.
So there is no kind of, rule of thumb that, okay, if you think about, doing business or doing art or whatever, then better think about if you want to stay here or better go somewhere else where you can better do business or art or whatever it is.
So do business and then what? I don't understand what's...
Okay. So I understood that Parashuram, he had very much the mood, the nature of being a fighter and being very angry and so on. So now, if I have now the nature to do art or do business, and I'm here and I'm therefore repeatedly thinking of this, then is this a sign that I should consider if I want to stay here, or is this a sign that...
You see, that's why I already said that you are thinking like this because you don't have the prime identity which I said. If you understand what it means, your identity. And this is what I spoke yesterday also when I was answering to Gargamuni. That you have to have that identity. It's not just a change of dress.
Yes.
You have to have a change of heart. So when you have that identity, then everything else will be secondary to that. Whether you want to do art or you want to do business, you will do under that identity primarily. It's like if you are a family person outside, okay, you have family, your wife, you have children, and you love them, like in a normal material sense, not that you just have them, but you are very much attached. So now you do business, you do art, you do anything. Where is your focus?
I always have the identity that this is my family.
Yeah. So wherever you go, you may go to another country and you may have to spend, say, 2 years living there, but you will be focused on your family, right? Because that's your identity, and that's your life, that's what you live for. So that's the identity you have to have as a devotee. And then you can be anywhere. You are in the ashram, you are outside. And when you don't have then identity, then also you can be anywhere. You can be in ashram or you can be outside. The same thing. So ashram is only to facilitate. But if the inner identity is not there, then you do the same things here also. Then ashram is not an ashram, it's just same another place for you to live. So it is that internal identity which really matters. And once you have that, then everything falls in line. When you do not have that, then this dichotomy comes. That on one side I am proclaiming to be a devotee, and then other side internally I am thinking, I should be doing business, I should be doing that. So then you have two identities, and you are struggling from one to another.
Okay, thank you.
So it has to be eknishtha. You become fixed in one, and then you can do anything. So wherever you go, you will carry that. So this is what Prahlad Maharaj says, Ya pritir avivekanam visheshvanupayani tvam anusmarata nata hridya maap sarpato. So he is giving the example for devotees of a person who is highly materialistic. That they are to be emulated by devotees. That these materialistic people, they do not give up their attachment for sense objects, family members, etc. They're very much fixed in that. They face so much problems, troubles, everything, but they don't give up. So he says, like that I want to have Priti for you. That no matter how much trouble comes, I should not give up. So as materialistic people, their heart is always fixed on that. Anapayani means it never goes away. So like that. So that's how the devotees function. Same way. Only thing is that the priti of materialistic people is material, it's based on body which is temporary and not our property anyway. And the devotee's priti is based on the real thing, on the truth.
Babaji?
Yes.
Yesterday you were saying that Jamadagni could have cursed the king, but he chose not to do it. And we have seen other examples of other Brahminical personalities that have cursed for much lesser offense. The king wanted to take the Kamadhenu cow, which was the means of subsistence and also of the seva of Jamadagni for doing his sacrifices. So why did he choose not to curse him? That's the first question. And the second is, in our case, as we are not in the same platform as Jamadagni, what is the criteria for us to not react or to react or act according to what in a situation like this kind?
So Jamadagni himself is saying that we are Brahmanas. This is he himself saying, Vayam Brahmanas Tata Arahanam Chamata Smrita. That's what he said, right? Samaya Arhanatam Gata. That we are Brahmanas and our quality is Kshama, that forgiving. So that if he curses means he is not forgiving. That's another way of taking. Parsuram is taking revenge physically, he will take revenge by verbal statement. Even if your curse does not come, the weak person, what it does, he abuses. Right? You may write a blog. So that is, that's also reacting. It is also taking revenge in a way. So that's what he says, that he did not want to take that. So as devotees also you have to see, first of all, reacting, as again I was saying what I was saying yesterday, that reacting will always give trouble. Means reaction comes without thought. You become overpowered by your mind, the lower nature. So then you react. So that is a normal thing. That's what normally people do. There's nothing great about it. As for acting is that you have to see a situation whether you have to forgive or you have to take action. Sometimes forgiving has to be done, sometimes you have to take action. But it has to be done with proper understanding and with balanced state of mind, whatever you do. And if you take action, then don't think that now you are free from the reaction of it, in the sense that other person will not do anything. Even if you are acting with balanced state of mind, doesn't mean that the other person will not do anything to you. You have to be prepared for that. So Arjuna is fighting. Krishna says you fight. So he may be fighting that, okay, I'm doing it, Krishna has asked me. I'm not doing out of just taking revenge, this, that, whatever is. Yogastha kuru karmani, but that does not mean that the opponents are not going to shoot arrows at him. So he has to get ready for that. Even after they won, their 5 sons were killed by Ashwatthama. So you have to also consider all that. So you have to see what you want to do. It is not simply enough to think that I am devotee and I am acting, so I am not involved in karma. No, you are not involved in karma, but other people are there, they will involve you in it. They will not leave you. So you have to take that very much into consideration. That what is the best path of action for me. So sometimes getting angry may be the action, sometimes sitting quiet may be action, sometimes fighting may be action, sometimes running away. You see, Krishna did all these things. He even ran away. You think he did not have the power to fight? No, he ran away. He also fought. So he did so many things. So that he was thinking what is the best in this situation. This big army is coming. If I fight, so many of my people will be killed. I have to also kill so many people. The root cause is this. Let me run away and then I'll deal with him. So he did that. He was otherwise, as a Kshatriya, you are not supposed to run away. If you show your back to the enemy, everybody criticizes you, but nobody criticizes Krishna. Because he was not fighting for this kind of name and fame. So this is where the ahankara comes. I am a Kshatriya, I will die, I will do this. So then you forget. So most of the time this is what happens. If you see Krishna's life, he is not stuck with anything like this. We get also stuck with principles. That is called niyamagraha. That is also one trouble, one obstacle. So Krishna is not also that I am truthful, I will never tell a lie. He is not stuck with anything. So this is what has to be understood from Shastra. So he is not only truth, he is supreme truth. Satyavratam satyaparam satyam. Satyasya yoni nihitam cha satya. So he is complete satya, but he also tells lies. Because if he knows what is the best outcome which can come by acting in a particular manner, whether it is telling lies or speaking truth or running away or fighting or hiding, or he is not after the ego that I am this, if I tell lie then everybody will criticize me. That was the problem with Yudhishthira Maharaj. He wants to be known as a truthful person in Dharmaraj. And then he is telling lies. You see the hypocrisy. If you want to be known as truthful person, then don't tell. So he said, Aswathama hato naro va kunjaro. Now he knows himself, he knows, right? That Aswathama is not dead. It is actually an elephant which was killed by Bhima. So this is a trick. This is hypocrisy. That I don't want to be known as untruthful, but actually I am being untruthful. Right? He himself knows that he is telling a lie. Because he knows himself that Aswathama is not dead. It is only an elephant who is dead.
I understood it that Krishna told him to do this, and that's why he did.
So why he cannot, if Krishna is telling him, why he cannot just say Aswathama is dead? Why he has to bring this Narova Kunjarova? Why they have to kill one poor elephant? Why? Why? Tell me.
Yeah, because he knew that he was lying.
No, why they have to kill an elephant?
Just to make that statement truth.
So that means he is being a liar. But he wants to be passed as a truthful person. Right? So it's not Krishna telling him and then he's doing it. If he has to do it because Krishna is telling him, what is the need of bringing an elephant in between? He's hiding behind the elephant. He's taking shelter of elephant, not of Krishna. Right?
Correct.
He's using elephant as a protection of his truthfulness. And he is actually telling a white lie and getting his guru killed.
Now I understand that. That's why he went and told Vishnu what he did. That was not fitting in the connection. Why did he go and tell Bhishma that he did this? He was regretting it.
So you see, Krishna is not like that. If he's telling lies, he is ready to say he's not taking some shelter of somebody. If he has to lift a weapon to protect Arjuna, he did not go in some roundabout way. When he saw that Arjuna's life is in danger, he did not care that what people will say. What kind of man is he? He is not keeping his vow. He did not bother about that. If it was Yudhishthira Maharaj, he wouldn't do. Let Arjuna get killed, but I will keep my word, isn't it? That's what Yudhishthira will do. That's with these other, because they have their ahankara. That I am Kshatriya, I am this, I am truthful. Krishna does not have that. So this is the secret he is teaching. So we get stuck in some principle. And he wants you to go above that. So look at Dasrath. Just to keep his word, he sent Ram to forest. Ram is Bhagwan. He has to be truthful. Raghukul Reet Sada Chali Aaye, Pran Jai Parvachan Na Jai. So Pran Jai Parvachan Na Jai, let Ram go to forest. I don't care. I don't give a damn. I love my Ram so much that I will die without him, but I will not go against my vow. So this is called, what you'll call, plastic dharma. Why he has to do that? He should have told Kaikeyi, forget, I'm not giving you this. How can I send Ram? I love Ram, he is my son, he is God, he is whatever, I don't care. Let me be known as that I did not keep my vow. So I don't give you that. Tomorrow I'm going to incarnate him. Finish. What will happen? People would have said, look, but they would have glorified him. Oh, look, he kept his love for Ram. So what is his love for Ram? Is his love for Ram more than keeping his word for Kaikeyi? Yes, no. So his love for his own word is more than his love for Ram. So it is difficult to understand Krishna now. You understand why it is difficult to understand him. Because what he is trying to teach is not some bookish religiosity. He is trying to teach that dharma projita kahte. Why Bhagavatam is so important? Why Vyasa wrote Bhagavatam and then only he was satisfied? Because before this you have all these stories which are wonderful. Of people who were Danvir Karna, the greatest charity giver, heroic people, truthful, Satyavadi Harishchandra, right? Truthful. But in Bhagavatam, how he is shown? That he was telling lie after lie. So that story is not told in Bhagavatam. But in Mahabharata, this is a big story. That how he gave up. So you can sacrifice so much, everything for your ahankara. But when it comes to sacrificing for Krishna, then you are shaking. So that's what Krishna is saying, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. This is what he is teaching. So for the sake of your ahankara, you can do. People are climbing Mount Everest. Why aren't they doing this? So many of them die so cold. I mean, you think it is very fun, big fun? No, big fun is that you come back from there. I met this guy who went to North Pole walking, this Polish guy, I met him. So I said that, is it not problematic? He says, yes, but So just going to North Pole is not a joke, I mean, you freeze here in Vrindavan. If you don't have a heater here, think of being in North Pole. But he did it. So for ahankara, you can do this. If you ask this guy, can you surrender like this to Krishna? No way. So forget it. Because who is going to call him on TV for that? And who is going to write articles? And who is going to take photographs? Nobody. So that's why bhakti is very rare. Because it is not about ahankara. It is about non-ahankara. Okay? Yeah.
So then, the sage was acting in a proper way, not to curse the king. And but here, I was thinking that basically all what has happened is just like an outcome of the seed being like the act of violence of the king, that he is greedy and he wants to basically get what is not meant for him.
Yeah.
Like the cow is the representative of the yagya and the source of the religiosity. So then the king, because of his ahankara, he didn't want to. He wanted that also for himself.
Yes. So what's your question?
So the question is that if this is, the seed of all this what has happened, all these people that were killed, and all the consequences of this act is so.
Yeah, so you make one wrong move and you see how many people lose their life.
So the king is violent.
especially when you are in a responsible position like king, then your one action can create havoc. You see now also same. Some president says, okay, go and attack there. Then army has to go. And so many people get killed dropping bombs. At least previously they were not killing the innocent people. It was always between armies. Now the war is with everybody. Look what happened in Second World War in Japan. So many people were killed just in a flash of a second. Their bodies melted. So one action can do so much suffering it can bring.
Babaji, why is it that despite listening to something, for example, like you just said that it's not good to react, that in a practical real life situation, one doesn't have the presence of mind not to react. What does one do in that situation to translate that knowledge into practice?
You yourself answered it, presence of mind. So we have to have presence of mind. If presence of mind is not there, then you are just guided by your chitta, your samskaras, your habits. So that's important.
And how does one then develop that presence of mind?
Okay, to come and live here with us. If you live there,
there's no flights at the moment, Babaji.
Take a ship. Take a boat.
The cruises have been cancelled.
So you are fortunate. No, there is no shortcut to this. You have to practice it. Because we have lived our life without being aware. So therefore we have to practice. There is no two ways about it.
Babaji,
Well,
there was one question in my mind, in the sense that you said that in any given situation we can have three options: either to tolerate, or to fight, or to run away. And like Krishna has shown all the three. And in the Shastra also at many places all three, like apart from Krishna, nobody has shown all the three. But then if all these three are going on in our mind, do this, do this, do this, how do we decide which one to do?
think of Krishna, he will guide you. Modern psychology also they have three: fight, flight or freeze. So you pray to Krishna, he will guide you which action to take.
My question was regarding Yudhishthira Maharaj that you said. Yeah. I was just thinking, why is, Yudhishthira Maharaj being such a great devotee, still he could do what his ego wanted, and then, like for me as a sadhaka, I will do whatever my ego says, and I don't do anything for Krishna. So, how do you rectify that? And
so we have to understand that whether it is Yudhishthira Maharaj or Parshuram, or this is the play for us to study it. I've said it again and again that these are not books of history. This happened, that happened, this king, his son. It's not. These books are to be studied so that we can somehow get this point of bhakti. So these are examples for us. So various levels of devotions, various levels of devotees are depicted here before we come to 10th canto. So this is to contrast. How do we know what is Uttama Bhakti? If I simply make the Lakshana, the definition, and so characteristic, you will not get it. Then it is contrasted, starting from non-devotees or Advaitvadis, Brahmavadis, Shrant Bhaktas, Dasya, all levels, to show that this is the Uttama Bhakti. Without that, we will not understand it. And we are fortunate that if we can understand even after that, because it is a foreign concept. It is a concept which does not exist in this material world, anywhere. You can read any other religious book or history. This concept is not found anywhere. This is only here in Bhagavatam. That is the speciality of this book. That's why this book is considered as Krishna Swadham Gate Dhyanu Dharma Jnana Devi Saha Kalau Nast Drisham Esham Purana Varko Adhinodita. So this Purana is a representative of Krishna himself. Just as it is difficult to understand Krishna, it is difficult to understand it. But the book at least is there. If you just study Krishna, you will not understand anything. What is trying to do? That's why people don't understand. So Vyasadeva has made an attempt to present Krishna to us in a digestible manner. And then even then it is not possible, but then our acharyas have worked so that we can understand what is Bhagavatam. What Jiva Goswami has done is just unparalleled by writing the Sandarbhas, because it is the study of this Bhagavatam, systematic. Many other people have commented on Bhagavatam, but he has systematically presented the subject matter of this book. Otherwise, Bhagavatam, so many commentaries are available and you can relish all of them. But actually, what is Bhagavatam trying to give? That Nigam Kalpataro Galitam Phalam. This Nigam Kalpataro is a wish-fulfilling tree. It will give you all types of fruits and you can relish all of them. But what is that its own fruit which came from the mouth of Sukadeva? That you have to understand from Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, their writings. Because they are the one who have tasted it and then made it available to us. So therefore these examples are there for us to understand that this type of mentality is there in us. Yudhishthira Maharaj is a character outside, but Yudhishthira Maharaj is inside us. So we have that Yudhishthira mentality. So this is the learning through storytelling. That's the course I made. So these stories are teaching to us the mind, our mind. But it is easier to study this way, then it is not impinging in our ego. So we can say Yudhishthira did this, Parshuram did this. Is actually we who do that. All this Pururava or Kartavira Arjun or Parshuram, they are all inside us. And in different occasions they come out. Sometimes you are Pururava, sometimes you are Kartavira Arjun, and sometimes you are Parshuram. So that's why this is the way to understand. So next time you can see which one is acting. Okay.
I was wondering about the difference between proper identity and ahankara. In the beginning of the class, in reply to Vilas, you mentioned the importance of proper identity as a devotee. And then you also explained how ahankara can be an obstacle.
Ahankara means identifying with your physical body.
Mm-hmm. It seems that you can also identify as a devotee and have it like.
So I already said that you have the prime identity as a devotee, then you can have all other identities. But when you don't have that as your prime identity, then you have your ahankara about I am a German, or I am this, I am a writer, I am author, I am a teacher, businessman, I am beautiful, I am a very dharmic person. Right? I am peaceful, I never get angry. So then you can have all those.
And if the identity of being a devotee leads to pride, that means that was not proper. That is also ahankara in the guise of proper identity.
Yes, that is called bhaktiyat. Anartha. Anartha coming out of bhakti. This is one very unique anartha which Vishwanath Chakravarti has invented. You never hear this anywhere. When I first read it, I said, what is this? Even bhakti is giving anartha, as if we did not have enough. But it is so true. Because our ahankara is like that, it looks for anartha everywhere. So even when you come to bhakti, you want to use it for yourself. So that is when before you are nishtita. That's why this whole analysis is doing is anishtita. So when that means you do not have the fixity, means you don't have your prime identity as a devotee, then all these things happen.
Thank you.
All right. Chalo kal.